Welcome to another mega exciting 5-minute auto pairing. No, not a 5-minute auto pairing, pardon me. Welcome to another session on the Kingscrusher radio show. We're going to have a look at Carlsen against Karjakin encounters. And we're going to carry on. This is part 6. Welcome. Oh, better turn off the echo there. Pardon me. All right, so in this part 6, I've got another 3 games, and let's have a look at the Tatar Stil in the Netherlands. Played in the Netherlands. This is the 20th of January, 2013. So this is only 3 years ago. This is a critical encounter. It's not a blitz game. It's not a blindfold game. It's just a normal standard time control game, this one, and heavy duty stuff. Magnus Carlsen playing white, plays knight f3. Karjakin responds with knight f6, and Magnus is not very ambitious at all in the opening of this game. He just plays g3. It's okay, at the moment it can be considered like reverse King's Engine defense, or just for the moment just Fianchetto in the King's bishop there. c6, this is a very logical idea, just a brick wall here. Let's put on a Kibitzer actually as well. Okay, so we have castling, bishop g4. And this is, I think this is the main book move actually. This bishop g4 here is actually the main move here. Also the bishop can come here as well, but this is the main book move. We have often d3 is played, and that is kind of reverse King's Engine defense style setup when you play d3, because then you're thinking that maybe e4 later. But Magnus's move is c4, and now we have d3 here. So it's still quite well trodden territory. C takes d5, e takes d5, and knight c3 is quite often played here. Knight c3, but here a slightly less trodden path, queen c2, but it does support e4. The queen is eyeing e4 to play e4 here. So we have bishop e7, knight c3. Again, e4 is really on the cards. And it's a bit radical actually now that, in fact, black usually castles. Karjakin did not castle. He actually did this move, giving up the bishop pair immediately. So you might think, well, why? Was it necessary? He didn't even wait for h3. Didn't even wait for that. So black usually castles, and we have e4 being played. This is the usual scenario. And knight c5 is popular here, or taking. Okay, so why did Karjakin take on f3? Well, it kind of means that now d4 is playable, and of course any e4 there's always the option of en passant, but for the moment the knight must move. The move goes here, and now black castles, so a very different position where the whole e4 concept is not there, but obviously white's got the bishop pair in this position. Are they not dangerous? Knight takes f6, knight takes bishop d2. White also, as well as the bishop pair, white enjoys some semi-open file pressure. The e2 pawn on that file, supported by the light square bishop, doesn't seem such a bad thing. It's potentially a backward pawn, but it's not that bad in this position, it would seem. With the bishop pair, surely white's pretty solid. We see a5. Any idea of b4 has kind of been discouraged. a3 anyway. And in fact, someone has played, there has been some games of a4 to try and stop b4, but in this game we see knight d5. Probably this isn't, well, it's also discouraging b4 in any case. And okay, Magnus plays this as though b4 is going to be played again, but queen d7. It's not actually played here, even though it looks kind of tempting as though you might want to play it, but it does kind of weaken squares. And in fact, I've uploaded a horror just earlier today, a 5-minute game where I played b4 and I got stuffed because then I came to c3, but that was only a blitz game, so those don't really count. But you've got to be careful when you play b4, you're creating too many weaknesses. I mean, maybe the a file could be a source of problems, but whatever the reason, Magnus is careful in this position. He doesn't want to commit. Once you move these pawns forward, you can't move them back. He just played rook fc1 here. If b4, maybe it's not so hot. Takes, let's have a look. Maybe it is a problem with this c3 square here and bishop f6. Then we can entrench a knight on c3. So it's not always wonderful to play b4. It's got a downside. It's weakening this square in particular. So okay, so we see rook fc1, rook fe8, queen c4, which looks at winning d4. That's supported now with knight c7, and it seems as though the bishop's still fairly blunted. Magnus is now playing h4. Interesting move. If you can get a pawn here, it will be useful. a4, fixing down white's queen side. And now we see bishop b4, trying to exchange off these dark square bishops and maybe, yeah, play the bishop against the knight. But knight b5, king comes up, h6, bishop c5. This vacates the b4 square, so if white wants to exert a bit more pressure here, he can with queen b4, which he does actually. Queen b4 now. Subtle stuff. What is actually going on? This is quite a heavy duty positional game. Has white got a small advantage? We see bishop f6. Black has really well and truly clamped down on any b4 idea, if that did exist earlier. It looks actually also potentially awkward for this bishop. If only black could play b6, this bishop would be pretty awkward here. The queen retreats, giving the bishop b4, king g7, rook c4, rook a6. And now a really crazy maneuver, and this has actually, I have actually annotated this game before, so this is kind of a revision, but this is an absolutely mad maneuver now. Queen d1, okay, bishop drops back, c5. Slight downside, the bishop's got a nice full view of the diagonal here. Knight c7. But on the other hand, black can get a nice knight on d5. Now here the rook voluntarily retreats in this position actually. And we see knight d5, but there's a fascinating hypermodern concept. And it'll be difficult to sort of guess, I think, what white plays here, because it's slightly outrageous. If I asked you white to play, what would you play in this position? I'll give you 20 seconds starting from now. It's really kind of an outrageous move, but I'll give you some positional clues. This diagonal, I mean, you might have seen this game before as well. This diagonal is a little bit sensitive because we have pawns on dark squares, so the adjacent light squares, they're a bit weakened, aren't they? But so there's a positional kind of move which actually the engine likes, as mentioned as well. It's interesting. So what would you play here if I give you 20 seconds? Any ideas? $500 points if you can guess it. Give you anyone else a few seconds. There's been a guess so far. 500 points if you can guess it. You might have seen the game before. Yeah. Queen h1, true hypermodern. These nifty queen moves. I like when the queen's here as well. This diagonal, you know, when the bishop's here. But this is just that side. Why not? You've seen queen a1 sometimes, haven't you? It's hypermodern stuff, pointing at that diagonal. So the threat is moving the king to unveil the battery on d5. We have bishop e7, king g1. The knight's politely asked to move now. It moves or not. No, it's protected. We have rook c2. Queen comes to g2 now. And some shuffling. King h2, as though queen h3, just to get rid of the queens now. It's on the card to simplify the position a bit. And you might think, is it going to be a draw? Black locks up the king side. Is it going to be a draw, or is this move portraying an idea of b3? Any idea of b3 is snuffed out here, Petrosian style. And some more shuffling. Now b3 is played in this position, nevertheless, despite the potential weakening of a3. So Magnus is still playing for a win, surely, to take such a risk. A takes, rook takes. There's always the mechanism of hitting b6 here. If white wants to put pressure on b6, this is happening. Bishop f6. As though knight c3 is an option for black. Rook c4. Okay, what's going on? Rook d6. King comes to f1. Some shuffling. a4, and there's always a trade here. If rook takes a4, then I think the idea is this. But let's just check. Black played knight c3. If he takes on a4, I mean, no, you can't take on a4. No, pardon me. This pawn's not on. Just take here. Thank you, free rook. Pardon me. Slap face. Sorry. Let's wake up. That was the whole point of rook c4, to play a4. So at the moment, anyway, b6 is also potentially vulnerable. There's the idea of bishop d5 and rook b6 in some lines coming up. We have knight c3, bishop f4. This is a long one. Rook e6. Now we have e3. Now there are some questions about b6 and a4 here. Knight takes a4. Bishop d5. Okay, now this is an interesting position. If rook e8, then there's bishop c6, and this is good for white. Yes, this is like winning an exchange. But on the other hand, where is the rook going? It does actually go to where it can be pinned. So a very, very exciting situation now all of a sudden, where white's winning the exchange, but black's got a pawn for it at the moment. So white's a pawn down, black's got a pawn for the exchange. Plays b5 with that knight seemingly holding c5. So is this rook wanting to go back? Well, it's also, by the way, hitting the bishop. So the bishop takes with check. And now the tactical point here is revealed that, first of all, if the rook humbly goes back, black wouldn't mind this because of knight c3. That's protecting that pawn, and there's compensation here, and also hitting the bishop. There's compensation here. This position apparently it's not so bad, this sort of thing, because we've got a grip on the position. The knight's kind of well entrenched, and it will be difficult for white to make progress here. So Magnus actually doesn't do that. He doesn't do a knight retreat. He plays rook takes b5, and that does seem to be a free pawn, except, can you see what black... No, actually I'm not going to say. Black's idea is knight b6. Knight b6. Hitting these two. So black is getting back some material here. Okay, and the thing is about this position, Magnus just supports his bishop here. If we look at other moves for a moment, I mean, I don't think they do as well. Bishop f3. This is in black's favour. Black taking back the exchange, and here, for example, is in black's favour. This would be very nice. Fragmented pawn structure targets, for example, here. It's just horrible. So actually, I think Magnus plays one of the better moves in this position, which is just to play e4. Just give back the exchange and keep a lock and key on black's pawns here. We have knight takes c4, check, and a lock and key opposite coloured bishops. And you might think, well, it's a bit drawish, opposite coloured bishops. But if you look at pawn mobility, white's got slightly better pawn mobility here. because this one's blockaded and there's potential to try and break a pawn out somewhere, you'd think, or crawl on the light squares. You can imagine light square maneuvers later. So this is a position of potential torture for black. Move 53, f4, rook e8, some shuffling, king's coming in, e5. So there is a route now, potentially, for the king. It stopped though, and now rook e7, rook c8. A position which you might think most players would, most grandmasters would just agree a draw or something, but I think the engine likes white's position as well. A slight advantage here at move 63. Okay, shuffling, and you might think it's not going anywhere until here, critical moment at move 67. And this looks like quite a controversial decision, but the pawn mobility here is emphasized with this move that I've just shown you, g4. It's a bit of a shocker, but the idea is that with the rook pressurizing the bishop, one idea is to play for h5, h6, because that would win this bishop. The other idea is that if g takes, then we have these two pawns coming up with e6 and stuff being dangerous, and this is happening now. H takes g to this move h5, immediately threatening h6 check, and it would be horrible to move the king back. Well, there's just h7 winning. So it would also be horrible though, surely, in this position for black to take, you might think, but probably technically that's the engine suggestion. Just take this pawn. Actually, that's the engine suggestion, even though it looks pretty frightening to do this. In the game we see rook h1, but let's have a quick look at this. How does it not lose? Because aren't these pawns really dangerous? f5, h4, and I believe I've seen some technical analysis here to explain this. This position, black's actually managing to hold equality in this line. This is a long line, but black, because he's got these pawns, should be able to draw this. And if the king tries to come over here, I think this is getting too dangerous to do this. Pardon me, not when the king comes to d2, pardon me. In this position, black's okay with king takes. This is a long way from the game, I know, but the king here is away from the pawn. This is just a long variation, I know, I'm aware of that, but black here would be fine. So if white has a winning attempt involving getting the king over here, it's not working. A point to note here is check would be wrong here. This is the time to take here, because check's wrong. Then white is just winning apparently here, driving, keeping the pawns. But no, that was the way. It's a technical way to, it seems, draw this, is giving up the bishop. It's been pointed out, I think, by some grandmaster commentators as well. I mean, who are also, of course, analysing with engines. You wouldn't, as a human, think of this continuation, because intuitively you're just you're giving white exactly what he wants, this f6 to win the bishop. But it just so happens in this particular position that black's able to draw just by sacking the bishop in this line. It's a draw by perpetual in effect, because the white king wouldn't want to go over here. If the white king's not going, it's just a draw by perpetual. The thing would be just a king f2, and it would be a draw. And you might have seen this variation before, because it is kind of a famous game, and this is a famous, in a way, it's a famous analysis variation where you can give up the bishop. But it's crazy stuff to just walk into white, what seems to be walking into white's whole idea here to liberate the pawns. But yeah, Sergey didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do g takes h5. He's not a supercomputer. He just plays rook h1. So again, white has this small advantage now, but it's opposite coloured bishops. His rook's more active, his king's potentially more active. You can see that the black king's a bit cut out. Is there enough to win this position? Okay, the first thing is to play h takes g. which opens up more this diagonal. That bishop's opened up more. Point to note here, if king takes g6, then we just take on f8. So f takes g is opening up that diagonal, and we've got now this passed pawn. Rook e6 is played, with the idea of sliding into a light square like this, coordinating the bishop and rook on f7. Now here, you might be tempted with a move like f5, but in fact that wasn't played immediately. We see bishop d5 hitting the rook to get the bishop to a very nice square potentially. Check, check, giving up this. And the tactic here is tempting, but I don't think it does anything. I think it's just a draw. White plays f5 instead. If he does it, I think it's just simplifying more than anything. This position might be too simplifying. It might just be a draw. It's opposite colored bishops. No, the pressure is capped here with f5. So move 74. This is a really chunky game. Really chunky. I know, f5. But this is the way to potentially, the promise here is two connected passed pawns. This is very dangerous to have two connected passed pawns. So we have rook e3, rook takes g6, and we have this two connected passed pawns scenario. Immediate issue, bishop g8 was played in this position, and it's actually kind of tricky here. That does seem a forcing move, driving the king back to the first rank, but why? If we just examine why for a moment, why not say e6 or king f4? If king f4, then bishop h6 check is a nuisance. White would have to give up the exchange because otherwise he's losing e5. Or is he losing e5? Well, yeah, black could take on e5. That would be end of winning chances. And giving up the exchange here isn't good. Black should have enough resources to at least draw that. So this, because of bishop h6, it's not good really to try and just support the pawn. So this forcing move also, of course, means that bishop h6 is kind of less tempting. The white rook without the king support can always take on h6. We have king f4 now. So again, this idea, we can test this, but it wasn't played. Bishop h6 wasn't played. Instead, rook c3. So the difference now is check. We can take that. We've still got the two connected passed pawns, and we can play a move like this, stopping black's passed pawn, and this should be winning for white. This position should be crashing through for white. Black has to avoid this. It's too dangerous. +7 there. So yeah, the subtle bishop g8 check means this whole bishop h6 thing is less effective. So king f4 is much more possible here. We have rook c3. Now f6, which gives f5 for the king. The two passed pawns seem to be working well, but what about black's pawn? He starts pushing that. King comes to stop that. c4. Black's got two passed pawns as well. Who's winning this? Bishop e6 now is played. I think this is one of the very strongest moves in the position actually. Bishop e6. On one level, on a simple level, it's actually just threatening check to win the bishop. Black has to do something about that threat. Another point about it is that if black, okay, let's imagine black played check here. Does that help? Probably not. Even though this pawn looks really dangerous, it seems this is possible. d2, we have check and mate, because this is now a very attacking resource, important for building mating nets. So okay, so bishop e6, bishop c5 check is not tempting, because the bishop's actually, now we can see the bishop's guarding a critical square. So forget the check. Perhaps Caesar check, plays check. No, it's king h7 is played. Bishop comes to f5. Now threatening. Check like this is really dangerous. Actually, a mate in 5, believe it or not. If black does a move, say black did a move like it looks to be, there's a threat of a mate in 5 anyway, with the rook coming back over here, and then bishop e6. It's kind of, I think it's tricky to demonstrate that, but that is threatened. The black king is in a difficult spot here. We see rook c2, and this does allow this pawn to be taken, potentially. Check, that is taken. Bishop takes c2, so pawn up, and these pawns are still strong at the moment. King g5, king d4, trying to take this pawn now. Bishop a3. And so the issue here is bishop b2 to undermine these pawns. But king takes c4 is played nevertheless. That pawn supported. The king tries to wrench the pawn chain out or create a blockade opportunity. Is black in time here? f7 is played now, so no time to take. Got to stop the queen. e6 is black blockading with the dark square bishop. It's reaching a tense moment. The king steps back. It looks as though, you know, sometimes you can get a blockade opposite colour bishops. But white's king is very aggressive here, now threatening king d7, e7, king f6, king d7. And the thing is, although e7 is not threatened, king e8 is potentially on the cards if that was supported, especially. What does black actually do here constructively? Black played king g7. If he just waits around, white first wants to do this without losing this, so would do this and then threaten this. And then if here we just play e7, and actually this one's also protecting that conveniently, so that'll be winning. So this is actually bad for black. This is all bad news for black now. King g7, and here e7 on move 92. And now Sergey resigned. And I did annotate this game on the channel back in 2013. It is a mammoth game, but for the sake of completeness I thought, oh yeah, okay, let's revise this game. Yeah, it's a 92 mover. Yeah. So what do we get from this game? I think there's some lessons on pawn mobility. If we just think about what happened, the winning attempt, okay, if Magnus was playing computer, the computer would draw with that bishop sack, but he's not playing computer. The mobility was scary. It did create mobility, and it's thought to be very drawish, the opposite colour bishop scenarios, because once you blockade, the opponent cannot often lift the blockade. It just happened to work in this position that the blockade wasn't working. It was too much. It was too much. So the winning attempt of g4 was quite remarkable for h5, you know, but white's pieces were putting the pressure. It was a way of cranking up the pressure, threatening things like h6, you know, to win the bishop. So earlier in the game, it seems, you know, Magnus played the whole opening just quietly. For a moment had the bishop parent. It didn't seem as though much was going on. But we had this very tactical kind of skirmish where white won the exchange and then gave it back. So the end result was just basically simplification, because Magnus didn't want to play the exchange up, but with black having a dangerous pass pawn and great compensation. No, he'd rather have a simple, clear position with a small advantage, which he drove through. So any questions on that game? We'll go on to another game. It is actually also video annotated on the channel, on my channel, back in 2013. But they say, you know, pawns are the soul of chess. So, you know, managing your pawn structure and creating dynamic possibilities with the pawns is a very interesting part of chess. So, yeah, that was a serious game, serious stuff. All right, we'll go on to another game now. onto a lighter game. So that was a major encounter in 2013. Now onto a lighter game. Let's look at a blitz game next. Or something. If I can find. Okay, can I check this game out on me? Not particularly. Seen that one. No, we haven't. Maybe we have. We're going to have a look at it again. I'm not sure. We went over this last week. Got another game here. This is just from a blitz encounter. It's less serious. Blitz. No, it's not. This is actually another serious game. Sorry. This is another serious game here. This is from the Norway chess tournament of 2013, which actually Karjakin was in peak form for this tournament, believe it or not. Even though it was played at Norway, Magnus's home, Karjakin actually did remarkably well in this tournament, getting 6 out of 9, winning it. So an outrage. He was on great form in the Norway tournament of 2013. So let's see what happens here. So he was playing white against Magnus Carlsen in round 5. So e4 from Sergey, and we have e5, knight f3, knight c6, all the pair stuff. Bishop a4, knight f6, bishop e7. It's pretty standard royal pairs. Won't comment too much at the moment. Now this is one of Magnus's pet lines, is to just retreat the knight here, the Breyer. It's the closed royal pairs Breyer variation with 10 d4, because 10 d4 is now played. d4, 10 d4, knight bd7. The knight reroutes, but this pawn is free as well to move up. We have bishop e7, bishop c2, pretty standard stuff. Bishop comes here. Bishop d3 is one of the main moves actually in this position. So look at black's queenside now. Goes over c6, queen c2. Usually b3 is actually played here. A usual continuation, for example, like this, is quite often played, just to fianchetto that bishop basically. But in this game we see queen c2 from Sergey, rook c8, now a takes, and b4. So it looks completely designed, well, a little bit designed against this, because we could always take that and maybe play d5. That might be the point here, to clamp down on c5. Magnus actually played queen c7. Let's just check that. He played queen c7. If c5, I think we just take with our b pawn, because we're taking with a less expensive, less centralized pawn, this c5 pawn, and then we could just blunt the bishop, surely. Or not. That might not be the point actually. There's another point here. I don't think d5, that's okay as well, but there might be even something better with d takes. So for example, like this is going to be nice for white, and this bishop can come here later. So b4 does discourage c5, so Magnus is waiting for the moment with queen c7. Bishop comes here, rook a8, no exchange of rook just yet, knight b6. Now Sergey presses forward on the queen side with c4, and he is in good shape here technically, it seems. The engine's like white anyway. Takes, 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 takes. And this looks like a sensitive diagonal. The bishops look kind of nice here. And there's also potentially a threat, an annoying threat of knight g5 just on f7. This sort of thing is potentially dangerous for black if it's not addressed, and it is addressed with h6. Just to prove that categorically, say black just did a waiting move. Let's just prove that f7 is actually an issue, right? I know it's pretty crude, but it might actually be an issue because we take here and then play f4 apparently. Because not only f7, h7 is an issue now. Because if takes, I think it's a total disaster now. Because we're now looking at h7 as well as f7. And this is total disaster time. Black's just gone here. No, that's a disaster scenario which kicks off with knight g5. So the idea of playing h6, it's a necessary evil, even though it weakens some squares. So h6 is played just to stop knight g5. We have d takes. Anyway, d takes. Bishop c3, as though queen b2, just put a battery on e5. Why not? It also, of course, supports the b4 pawn. Queen b2 comes next, which would also support the b2 pawn, but loads of pressure on e5 coming. So at this point, white is still okay. And in fact, if I asked you, who do you prefer here, white or black? Let's have a quick poll. So white or black here, who would you prefer at the moment? So this is move 24. So this isn't a blitz game or blindfold game or rapid game. This is actually another serious game. Who would you prefer at this point? Any ideas? Would you prefer white or black? White? Yeah, white's doing okay at the moment. And most of you say white on stream. Okay, bishop a6 was played by Magnus, trying to get rid of white's bishop pair. White wants to retain his bishop pair here. If he did take, then I don't think it's very exciting after that, this position for white. It's not very exciting. Something like this, I don't think it's a big deal, but black can actually support that anyway. So white wants to keep this potentially nice light square bishop on the board. He plays bishop b3, still looking at f7, keeping the tension of the position. Now Magnus plays c5, and we have now queen b2. So I'm threatening the pawn now, and also if c takes, I think we just take with the bishop as well, and this would just be horrible for black. This sort of thing is horrible. Liberate the position totally, and it's just horrible position for black, because then we have got pressure points like here and here. This is just an example. So anyway, c takes b4 is not played. c4 is played though by Magnus, which is probably a really good move in the circumstance. It's actually, I think it's one of the best moves in this position for black. So it's shutting down this bishop on diagonal, and it seems as though, hold on a sec, what about this pawn here? If bishop takes there, then rook takes, and we're getting two pieces for the rook, and that's fine for black. So this bishop's shut out for a moment. It goes actually to, it seems the correct square, a4. You might think, you might be tempted by something else. I don't think this is any good. Black's fine. Bishop d6 fine. Bishop here, I think black would be fine. Again, the bishop's, it's not really going to do much. So the bishop goes somewhere. At least it can do something. It can attack the rook. The rook moves. And there's still this point about winning this pawn. That is taken now. And the thing is, okay, this is on a less dangerous diagonal. Black has given up a pawn. He has got a passed pawn. Potential pressure down this e-file. This knight's slightly vulnerable maybe sometimes. But e4 is the first thing. Bishop b7, putting pressure on e4. So it's compensation time. Has Magnus got enough compensation for his pawn? Well, he's forcing white to play potentially a defensive move, which he does do now, bishop c2. This might not have been... This is also worth investigating. Bishop b5 here. But anyway, bishop c2 was played. Is there any compensation? Well, the rooks are nicely doubling though, it seems. And this is supported though with f4. Those are weaknesses are being created here, but white is a pawn up, and it's a centre pawn. Bishop d6. Now we have a rather a rather strange move. In principle is played here, which I think some players would be cautious about. In this position, I think white has to play carefully, accurately. There's two batteries here. This one, and this whole diagonal. You don't want to unleash the power of the whole diagonal. But the thing is, the move played is actually king h2. King h2, which seems to go straight into this battery. This one. It seems strange. The engine's suggestion is is even stranger actually. The engine, one of Fritz, I have to say Fritz, probably not other edges, just says to go here. But what does black do exactly in this position? It might be sufficient for a moment to just do this, maybe. But anyway, this king h2, I don't know about you guys, but in some ways it seems at an intuitive level asking for a bit of trouble. And in fact, now Magnus does kind of tap into this diagonal being, it looks vulnerable, because sometimes, you know, it is vulnerable. So black to play here, Magnus plays a move which questions the stability of this diagonal. What would you play here with black? Black to play. Just in case you've joined on stream, this is a game, was a historical game back in 2013. The World Championships later in the year. Okay, now g5 does seem tempting. Yes, g5 does seem tempting, and it is actually one of the top engine suggestions. So 50 points for all those that have said g5. And in fact, it wasn't played though, g5. So you'll get 100 points for what was played, which is also liked by engines actually, and even giving black a tiny advantage. But you know, you're on the right track with g5. Yeah. Now you get 100 points for knight h5. But let's have a look at g5 first. Why not try and disrupt this thing? Apparently, well, this is near disaster, right? Because if g3, it's approaching a total disaster. Because we've got stuff like this. Here, rook takes here, and black is actually winning this position, it seems, because it's just a nightmare for king safety. This position here is a nightmare for king safety. For example, like check, bang, winning the queen next. But there is a way of actually technically playing this position. Not that any human would find out the way of playing this position, but after g5, forget g3, apparently b5, giving up that pawn for b6, questions the battery now. If the queen goes here, apparently the white's not getting mated after knight takes c4, hitting the bishop. If check, that's e5 time, or rook takes d6. That's better for white. Yeah, okay, so there's a way of playing it. Apparently there's a way of doing something about g5, which doesn't involve losing horribly. So in the form of b5, but that's a computer response, b5. King here I don't think is particularly good. Well, we can still play knight h5, but no, knight h5 seems actually technically stronger than g5. So white supports that now, but the knight has made way for this pawn, f6, just to kick that knight. Knight g6, and now the point is revealed, and I must say black's position is beautiful. Look at black's position. This, I mean, if he wasn't the pawn down, it'd be even better. But he's got nice pressure here and here. These double batteries, and this bishop lurking around the scenes. But anyway, there's a nice move that Magnus Carlsen plays in this position. So black to play. This is really crushing stuff. I have to get rid of the arrows. Get rid of the arrows. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the arrows. Black to play. So this is a sharp game and a half. Black to play. Move 33. Any ideas? Black to play move 33. Yeah, 500 points. Yeah. Now it looks as though the knight's protecting f4, right? So you wouldn't dream of sacking on f4, right? But no, lo and behold, knight takes f4 is played. Let's have a look. What the heck, you might ask? Well, if takes, we take. And it's pretty dangerous for white, this position. Because if takes, for example, we don't want this queen around the king. Queen g3 here, and it starts to be embarrassing. Because there's a threat of rook e4, and everything's crashing down on white's king. For example, like this. It's all horrible. It's all horrible. And this is just a disaster. This position, even though white's a bishop up, white is facing the firing squad. Yeah. So no, that's pretty dangerous stuff. So in this position, actually, a counter sack was played, which is probably the safest. To get extinguished the battery, rook takes d6. What does black do here? Crikey, what is going on here? Well, what black cannot do is take on d6, because then just knight takes f4, right? End of game. Black's got nothing. So black plays knight takes g6. Now, engine likes black, though, after this smoke is cleared. Rook takes. We'll play rook takes. Let's evaluate material and stuff. It's equal on pawns. Black has knight bishop against the two bishops. Isolated pawn, slightly weakened king. Okay, we have bishop d4. And now, again, a very attacking move. f5, trying to slice open this diagonal, trying to tease open this diagonal. You know, if e takes, then it's actually, well, there's actually rook takes e1 anyway, so that's not possible. And it's also mate here. Yeah, there's checkmate. Yeah. No, you can't take that pawn. Bad news to take that pawn. No. So we have e5, but it does open up this diagonal still. But Magnus actually took on e5. If he plays queen c6, bishop takes f5 actually defends g2, and of course we've got h1 defended, so there's no problem here, it seems. That's better for winning for white. So no, We have knight in this position. We have knight takes e5, which is looking weird, isn't it? Because hold on a sec, isn't white like protecting e5? Isn't this just crazy? What is this knight takes e5? This is crazy stuff. Well, it's a similar idea to what we've just seen actually. Queen c6 now, and you might think, well, we just saw this, right? And white had bishop takes f5 there defending g2, yeah? Does this work in this position though? Not really here, because bishop takes f5. Guess what black has in this position? This is a variation of the game which didn't happen. Black's play here. And it's actually really good for black, this next move. Because white's critically defending two keys, nannying two squares here. But what can black play in this position? Well, it's the only move to think about because the rook's attacked. So there's only one real move to think about here. Yeah, there's only rook takes e5, trying to deflect either this guy, Majesty from g2, or the rook from h1. You know, this one here, this one here. And if we defend, we still try and deflect with rook takes f5 on h1. You know, this one here. So, okay, so that's how that works. So bishop takes f5 is not a resource. It doesn't work in this position. Doesn't work. This is pretty bad now for white all of a sudden, because mate on g2 is threatened. Yeah, something has to be done about mate on g2. Just to appreciate the tactical mastery there, just hold on a sec. We said, just to recap, that queen c6 wasn't working there because there was bishop takes f5. Show you this doesn't work for black. There's no time to take here. We just take on e6, check, end of game. Yeah, nothing works there for black. But by Magnus sacking the knight first, this is tactical genius. He sacks the knight first. Somehow this all works. This queen c6 completely works in this position. It's engine approved. Engine approved. I assure you, this works. There are resources, other resources like bishop e4, but black ends up just better here because things like e3 now are still threatened. Yeah, black still ends up better here, even in this scenario. It's better for black. Black can start doing this sort of thing. All right, so okay, we have this critical position now where the poxy looking rook g1 is played, just to defend g2, the g2 mate, and also keep an eye on h1 as well. But now we have queen d5, and this bishop dare not take or move because rook e2 is just end of game. Yeah, rook e2 is a mate in 2, just rook moves, queen takes. So pretty bad. Bishop takes f5 is played. Black takes on e5 with gigantic threats, well, threatening the bishop and other stuff now as well. The bishop goes here, and white's king is just looking too fragile now. There are moves, more than one move to skin this cat here. If c3 is strong, but Magnus played h5. Where's the bishop going? So it can't interrupt. Can it? Is the rook holding things? Bishop went all the way back. If it goes here, c3. And this position is just really strong. Like for example this. So the bishop just decides to go all the way back. It's not very nice. c3 anyway. Because also, if you look, there's a2 point. If queen takes, I think there's queen a2 check. Indeed, queen a2 check would be winning here, because if we do something like this, then there's rook e2 check, just winning. And if we put the queen in front, we just take there, winning the bishop. So this is another body blow, this move c3, in a way, because this queen is just working magic on both sides of the board to get to white's king after c3. Body blow. So the queen tries to stick around the second rank with queen f2. But there's a beautiful rook f5. Well, I know it's protected by the queen, but yeah, we want to try and get this move as well if the queen's not protecting the second rank sometimes. Queen e3. And for the moment, actually, it seems queen a2 might not even be the strongest move anymore, although it is pretty strong apparently. But even stronger though, I think Magnus played one of the very strongest moves in the position now. If you can guess this one or another one, there's two really strong moves in this position, but I mean it's a winning position. Okay, let's see what you think. Black to play, what would you do here, which is logical and attacking? So a logical attacking move here from black. Any ideas? Black to play. Okay, I think I have to give you 100 points for either h4, which is the top move actually of the engines, or queen f7 as played, which is also really strong. I think both of these sort of are really bad news for white. You see, if h4, then what is white doing? g4? He just gets murdered. It's mate in 4 actually, check. And both diagonals, it's slaughter time. What does white actually do there? And if he ignores it, this is how strong the position is. This is crushing because this scenario end up winning material. So h4 is pretty crushing, but you know it's so strong in the position. Queen f7 is also another crushing move, just with the idea of rook f2 check. The king's out of squares after rook f2. We have g4, which is trying to give the king maybe g3. Is that really the case though? It's not forced to play the check. If check, it wasn't played, but this is still really good for black. Even this, well, it's just winning for black. Because if we go here. This is a fascinating variation. Actually, this is a technical line. This didn't happen, but there's actually a nice winning move in it. So I'm going to ask you about that. So I mean, you might think, why not check immediately? Yeah. So we have this c2. I'll take you here to this position. In this line, there's a crushing move. I'll give you 500 points. If you can find it. Black's play in this weird variation. No, it's not that. It's not that weird to think about. Black's play in this position has got a crushing move. Can you see? No, you're not going to find it. I don't think anyone's going to find it. Queen c7 is only for a small advantage. Tiny advantage. Oh, play chess. Many people on play, 3 people on play chess have stacked up behind Queen c7. It's apparently only a small advantage because of king here. If we do this, takes here, check. Let's draw. Because otherwise, if we have a draw, or we don't have a draw, it's not particularly. This is drawish, this position. A lot of people stacked up behind Queen c7 there, but no, there's something which makes Queen c7 more effective. Now I've given you some information which is a clue actually, because in that version of reality, do you remember the king? Remember, a lot of people stacked up behind Queen c7, but you remember I said King h4. So that's the clue, right, to the move, which black should play first. So I've just told you this story of the king escaping to h4, yeah, which is a slight issue, right? So what could we play first? Yeah, okay, we can play g5 here. This is winning this position, because the threat really is actually it's a mate in 1 there, or a mate in 3 here with Queen f4 coming up, because we're going to be mating. Yeah, g5 is actually winning here. h4 check I don't think does anything. This is similar to the other line, although we can pick up that rook. It's like perpetual check time. It's a little bit similar in traits to the other line. Yeah, no, but g5 really threatens mate in 1 anyway, so it needs to be checked out. It threatens mate in 1 here, and if g takes, it's just a sideline. Well, still mate in 1. That doesn't give the king any squares. So this is terminal. h4 gives the king h3, but here we do this, check, and this is a slightly different scenario because hg, bishop g2 check, because if takes here we have queen takes h4 mate, and if takes we just win the queen. Yeah, so this is a technical engine move. g5 is just crushing. It's end of game. All variations end of game. But anyway, but let's go back to the game. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, let's go back to the game. So that's just in case you were wondering. You know, rook f2 check. It is pretty good. Yeah. In this line it does actually work with g5 very well, but no, there's other ways of winning this position. You don't need to play the check. Magnus actually played rook e5, which is a stunner because it's trying to deflect the queen away from f2. This is what was played. You know, if queen takes, we have simply queen f2 check, mating next move on g2. Okay, so rook e5 is very problematic for white, and simpler than trying to work out that stuff with g5. So the queen has to stick around somewhere. Where though? If the queen tries to stick around here, then there's a crushing there's a really crushing there's a crushing resource in this position. Black to play here. What would you? This is a variation which didn't happen. The queen didn't go to g3, but let's suppose the queen wanted to try and stick around, black has a really crushing move in this position. What does black play here? Well, actually, there's two crushing. C2 is pretty good as well, just to break into the 7th rank, to be fair. Because if takes, then we murder with rook e2, for example. And if bishop f3, then we just take that. But even more crushing than c2 is h4, apparently. So if takes, we're back to this queen a2. Queen a2 rears its head again. King g3. This is like forcing mate sequence. This is like a forced mate. Yeah. So anyway, the queen didn't go to g3. The queen went to d4 here, and it's still in contact with the f2 square, right? So you might think that's a really good thing. But the final move of the game, black here now plays a simple and very effective, simple looking and very effective move now, and it finishes the game. So black play final move test, black to play, and it caused white to resign here. Yeah? What does black play here? Okay, we're gonna have to go with it now. I'm gonna go with it. Queen c7. So threatening mating 1 with the double check and mate threatened. Now if white did decide to try and play on here with, say, queen f4, then this check, okay, is either going to be winning the queen if takes, or if here we just play no, there's a punchline here. There's a punchline in this position, actually. This is too good. This is too good. This is too good. There's a funny move here, actually. There's a hilarious move here in this variation. Black to play, and it's funny. I think it's academic though, because actually h4 check is winning, right? Isn't h4 check winning? Yeah, I think this is just winning the queen, but there's actually a funny one. There's a funny resource in this position, which is even stronger than h4. Yeah, there's one that's even stronger than h4. Now this is just a theoretical tactics test. Yeah, now. You don't need to play this like computer like. G5, because if takes, then we have h4 checkmate. We've got all the squares covered. We've got this mating net. We've got all the squares covered. Yeah, if white can throw in a check, just lays it a bit. King h8. Remember, the queen's pinned, it can't go for a check. And then it's like a forced mate in 2 here. If takes h4, if here it's just mate in 2. So that's why our evil engine friends think, you know, they are absolutely cruel. Not even h4 is good enough for them here, winning the queen. g5 is anyway. So, but in the game, what happened again? Okay, so queen f4. In fact, after queen c7, white actually resigns. He didn't actually test queen f4. Basically, I mean, I think the simple line to calculate why queen f4 doesn't work is this one, because if takes, we take the queen, right? And the simple deflection, really, point of the matter is we've always got h4 anyway. If we didn't see g5, just take the queen like this. It's not a big deal to win this position. Anyway, so did Magnus get lucky here? Didn't he just lose a pawn and just have massive pressure after? Did he get lucky? Or do you believe in Capablanca's quotation, like the better player is always lucky? Didn't he just go a pawn down and then have a massive attack? Or is it Capablanca's quotation? I think for me the resolution of chess is gigantic. You know, if you talk about chess like you talk about TVs, you know, the resolution of resources is much more than we can imagine. So losing a pawn, if you can get dynamic pressure, you know, that dynamic pressure in the right hands, sacrificial hands, prepared to sacrifice, is going to be really dangerous for your king safety. So that's why maybe, you know, the good player is always lucky, because he's got this wealth of resources that they're checking in the positions, yeah. And it's not like backgammon, so, you know, where you've got the dice, you know, you can see all these. If you can see all these amazing resources, you know, the pressure for the pawn. It was very tricky for white, that position, when he was a pawn up. It seems very tricky. I think because these two games have been quite big and complicated, I think we'll carry on next week. So I hope you enjoyed this week, and if you like the video, please do, you know, likes are always appreciated. So I hope you enjoyed it and got something from it. So there's fun. I think there's a lot of fun to be had from the theoretical variations. I think there's a lot of fun anyway. I hope you did, and see you next week. Okay, have a good week.